Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the show. This is Psycho Silver, and my name is Jerome. On this channel, we are keeping a very close eye on the death of the dollar. We are alive to witness the collapse of an empire, and we are in the midst of watching many nations move to deleverage themselves from US debt. Also, because of that, keeping a very close eye on the gold and silver vaults around the world. They're all being drained of their precious metal. Much of the metal is going into the hands of central banks, going into the hands of private individuals who are not always taking the metal completely off the vault. But we do see with the registered silver and gold in the COMEX that much of it is no longer for sale. And at what price would it be for sale again? We don't know. Also, keeping a very close eye to, as the debt derivative bubble starts to unwind, you have nations looking to secure natural resources for themselves. A big theme of what's happening over the next 10 years with the massive commodities bull run and the reformation of the dollar is many of these nations need to begin to secure the natural resources, especially energy and metals needed to fuel their economy. We will at least temporarily be moving from a fake digital economy, at least in part, to an economy worldwide that is firmly based in real tangible assets. It has to be that way. It's coming. And we have a lot of proof of this, a lot of interesting examples that we're going to look at tonight on this show. What I do is I surf the internet. I have many accounts set up that I've spent years procuring the best people to follow and to get the news to come to me. So what I do for you is I spend hours every night finding the most interesting information, and then I bring it to you in one presentation. So I do hope this is a useful service for you. And we're going to jump into the news and have a look at all this stuff right here. Let's go. First thing up for us, I have a tweet from Tavi Costa. Tavi writes, "The British pound is ready to get pounded again. The UK 10-year yield just got surged, the most since the COVID crash and the GFC, excluding last week's havoc. This is completely dysfunctional, and the Bank of England will be forced to step in again." So already last week, we did have the Bank of England forced to step in as yields on the British 10-year pound were spiking. And they did step in with the central bank, who printed money to keep the treasuries in check. However, that was just a temporary, not even a fix. As one person put it was a temporary painkiller. What remains is the problem of insolvency due to debt, and also these programs that are insolvent. In this case, it's the British pensions. Insolvent, need to be reformed, and until that happens, the pound and the 10-year yield are going to continue to be a problem. And also, they carry an enormous amount of US debt, and every time the US raises its interest rates, it puts pressure on England. So they have pressure from all sides here. Next up. Here we have breaking news from the Associated Press. Breaking. President Biden said the risk of nuclear Armageddon is at its highest since 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, as Russian officials speak of the possibility of using tactical nuclear weapons after suffering massive setbacks in Ukraine. Here's Joe promising to go toe-to-toe with him in February of 2020. Next up, this is an important article. This is a very important article. This is from the Sputnik. The Sputnik says, House Democrats move to pull U.S. weapons from Saudi Arabia. The UAE in retaliation for OPEC oil cuts. So this doesn't sound like it's a done deal. Let's keep reading here. For years, Democrats pressured the former Trump administration to stop supporting the Saudi-led war in Yemen. However, when Joe Biden became president, he introduced only moderate changes to U.S. policy. Now, refusing to cooperate with the U.S. proxy war against Russia could be what gets the U.S. troops withdrawn. House Democrats have introduced a bill to withdraw the U.S. air defense systems from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates in retaliation for the production cuts by OPEC. This is okay. So right here, this is an example of something. If the normal person encounters this article, they don't know what to make of it. Only when you understand this in the context of the petrodollar do you grasp the ramifications of this. So right now it's just a bill. And of course, it's the Democrats that are arrogant enough to suggest this. But this is multifaceted. Does Saudi Arabia need us anymore? Probably not. They have excellent deals with other nations. China and Russia come to mind. And Saudi Arabia has substantially built up their own military capabilities. And they control a good portion of the oil. So in the beginning, when we did give birth to the petrodollar, with Petro replacing gold as what underpins the dollar, Saudi Arabia might have needed us. By us, I mean the U.S. We were supposed to defend Saudi Arabia as an ally, and Saudi Arabia was supposed to supply us with unlimited oil at low prices. But we did manage to get the entire world on the petrodollar. Now, first we've seen that Saudi Arabia is cutting deals on the side, and it's no longer the petrodollar. It's more of an open market approach. But now they seem to be uninterested in complying with our requests. That normally I would think that this sort of stuff would be automatic. As the White House said yesterday in an issued statement, it does appear that Saudi Arabia is at least in some sense siding with Russia, which is bad news. And that's why this channel is about the death of the dollar. And this is why you need gold and silver. Next up. Here's an article from RT. Russia and Iran agree to swap supplies of oil and gas, according to a senior official. The deal is part of an energy alliance and expected to be signed by the end of this year, Russia's deputy prime minister said. Russia's deputy prime minister, Alexander Novak, announced on Thursday that Moscow and Tehran may agree to swap supplies of 5 million tons of oil and 10 billion cubic meters of gas to be completed by year's end. He added that the two countries were currently working out routes and technical arrangements for the exchange of supplies. Once again, we've managed to make outcasts of each of these nations separately, but with the rise of the BRICS and the U.S. increasingly see its allies choose the other side, like India, for example, we do have another polarity in the world, and they are calling it a multipolar environment, and it appears more and more to be so. And it will be impossible to maintain dollar dominance, at least in the form that we've been accustomed to. That will be impossible moving forward. And every one of these articles are of profound significance. Every one of these occurrences are of profound significance, and they're coming so fast that it's really tough to process. In other years before this, any one of these announcements would be one of the biggest events of the day, if not the week. But in this environment, there's too much going on. Next up. Here we have an article from Al Jazeera. Let's get that out of the way. Mexican economy minister resigns during U.S. energy dispute. The U.S. energy complaint put Clouthier in a tough position, forcing her to defend policies that Mexican officials privately concede very likely breach a North American trade deal. So what we have here is we have the Mexican energy secretary is resigning because the elected officials in Mexico, they've decided that they are not going to comply. Mexico has decided that they aren't going to comply with an energy agreement that they had with the US. So we do see that we have trouble in our own backyard. And this Clouthier here was trying to serve both sides, but found herself in an impossible situation, being unable to appease both the US and the Mexico that she represents. I don't have the details of what this agreement's supposed to be, but it does suffice to say that yes, the energy crunch is happening in our own backyard too. And we see these nations becoming more stingy with their natural resources because the energy crunch is here. But it's not just energy, it's all natural resources. And every day we see more and more evidence of exactly that. On to the next. Here we have a tweet from someone named Fubar, XO Fubar. Somebody on BNB just got hacked for 2 million Binance coins. And that equals 600 million USD. The attacker is spewing funds across liquidity pools and utilizing every bridge they can to get to safer chains. Complete chaos on the chain. So we do see there was a theft of this BNB, which is the Binance coin. And I assume that did occur on the Binance exchange and to the tune of 600 million. I'll leave you, you can make of that whatever you want. Yet another reason I'm interested in crypto. I like crypto, but even the best of the best being hacked for insane amounts. And always the weak link in the system is the person, because humans are flawed. They can make the security of the network, of the computers, so good, but in the end, the person is the weak link. And I would be interested to find out how this happened. Next up. Here we have a tweet from the great Martí. I love this account. Just some simple technical analysis. Let's get in here a little bit. Synchronicity, he calls it. And here we have a comparison between the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009 to right now. And we do see a very, very similar chart right here. And it would mean that we're very close to a capitulation event. And I believe this is the XPX. And so we would be nearing that in the next few months here. That looks like pretty clean technical analysis to me. Next up. Here we have a tweet from FX Hedge. Biden, Putin not joking about tactical nuclear weapons. Armageddon risk at highest level since Cuban Missile Crisis. Here we have an article from Zero Hedge. Zero Hedge writes, nearly half of Americans making 6 figures are living paycheck to paycheck. So it's not always about what you make, it's about what you spend too. Very undisciplined, many people are. Roughly 60% of Americans say they're living paycheck to paycheck, a figure which hasn't budged much overall from last year's 55%, despite inflation hitting 40-year highs. Even the people earning 6 figures are feeling the strain, with 45% reporting living paycheck to paycheck, which is up 7% from last year. The Consumer Price Index, which measures the average change in prices for consumer goods and services, rose higher than expected, 8.3% in August, driven by an increase in food, shelter, and medical costs. Here's an interesting chart. Stuck in credit card debt. 60% of credit card debtors carry debt for more than 1 year. Ouch. So not even the high earners are immune to spending everything that they make. And we will see with this onset of a certain recession and possibly depression, many people will fall into poverty, even those that are earning a good living for themselves right now. Here's a tweet from TO. TO writes, UK bond market and currency is in pain again today. There was no Bank of England rescue last week, only a painkiller for a few days. The Fed broke the BOE. Something is broken now. Others will follow very soon. Policy changes soon. This user asks, do you think the main disturbance in the markets is the Fed's rate hikes, or is it growing QT? Do you think the Fed will drag the markets into a depression like 2018 and 2019 September and then take a step back from QT? If so, what about inflation? I mean, these are the questions we're all asking right now. We are between a rock and a hard place. Do we want the higher interest rates that will save the US dollar, but cause massive defaults and the bursting of the debt derivative bubble, which could take the dollar down anyways? Or do you want massive debasement of the dollar through hyperinflation, quantitative easing, bond buying by the Fed? There's no good way out of it. The only potential way out of it would be a massive reform, and these politicians will never own up to the situation that we're in, and we're currently in the midst of a looting of American wealth and resources. Unlike there's nothing been like it, and that's underway. And they don't want to stop that. They want to get everything they can out of this before the time has arrived that the dollar is indeed dead. I'll read this response here. Yes, similar to 2018 and 2019 progression, but it will be very severe since the entire globe is in deep trouble already. I'm not worried about inflation in the US, but elsewhere, currency crises are possible due to the dollar wrecking ball. Yes, that is the dollar milkshake. And we'll just go with the headline since I am paying Bloomberg for subscription. Zinc and aluminum rise as LME bans new metal from Russian firm. So we have more sanctions on Russia here. Exchange restricts deliveries from Euro mining and metallurgical. It is the LME's most significant restriction on Russian supply. So they're banning Russian suppliers, which is supposed to hurt Russia, but it's really hurting everyone. And I am aware that zinc mining and silver mining are very interconnected. Like you usually get a lot of one when you get the other, or you usually get a lot of the other when you get the one. So there is some significant supply of silver out there due to the profitable mining of zinc. And this can only further restrict supply of silver, and this will be fueling the general move that entire nations are having towards real assets, real tangible assets. Here we have a tweet from Jane Addams. Let's make this a little bigger. Oh, that's too big. That's really big. Jane Addams writes, if governments can just print money, why are we paying taxes? That's a good question. This guy jokes to give the currency value. Dave Kranzler responds, Actually, the only reason the dollar hasn't collapsed is because the Fed, unlike the ECB, has the ability to print an infinite amount of currency to service the government debt. Eventually, the US will end up like the Weimar government in Germany, and the dollar will end up worthless. Well, it's the only possibility. Again, the only question is, do we get there via collapse through defaults, or do we get there via hyperinflation? But either way, we do see the spell of the fake fiat currency being broken. Here we have a tweet from CoffeeZilla. Celsius just doxed all their users. And oh, by the way, we found out that their CEO withdrew 10 million right before the bankruptcy. And so Celsius is that cryptocurrency that collapsed maybe a month ago. And I put this into my presentation because you can be certain that there'll be many more cryptocurrencies that will also collapse in short order. These cryptocurrencies rely heavily upon cheap, nearly free money in the form of quantitative easing, easy to borrow money, the fake digital, the whole entire finance system in its own metaverse that's not connected to reality, but reality is knocking right now. And we will see many more of these cryptocurrencies fail. It's a certainty. And this is just another example of even how the founder understood that it was time to get out before it crashed. Great reporting from CoinDesk. Manishki took out 10 million. Another top exec took out 7 million. Plus 4 million in collateral. Could there be criminal charges from this? Of course there could be, but of course there could be criminal charges, but who and with what resources? And some will follow up on. Another problem, it's not always clear which jurisdiction, especially when it's places around the world. Next up, we have a tweet from Al. This is the due diligence guy. He writes, just imagine what would happen to real money, gold and silver, if the Fed had to step in as the UK just did. Treasury's liquidity problem exposes Fed to the biggest nightmare. The latest bout of global financial volatility has heightened concerns about regulators' continuing failure to resolve liquidity problems with the US Treasuries. The debt that serves as the benchmark for the world. It's the same problem. So I don't know if we're getting repetitive here, but what we have to do is look at the news from around the world, and you find that it's the same problem everywhere. It is the debt, and it's manifesting as the bonds, as the treasuries, in interest rates. The debt is unsustainable, and we have politicians completely unwilling of having a reckoning with each other and the people to get this situation cleared up. No one has the balls. And frankly, I would assume that no one really has the political capital to take care of this in a responsible way either. We see that they're just going to let it implode. And which way it does implode, we don't know yet. But it's a certainty by now. $1 quadrillion in debt derivatives around the world. And any money that can't escape to real assets is going to be doing such in short order. Next up. Oh, I thought this was a funny cartoon. The adventures of the guy who just started paying attention. And he says, so the Federal Reserve is a private corporation that creates money backed by nothing. What? That's a great cartoon. I got to say that one. Next up, oh, this was just an open tab from earlier. 2 open tabs from earlier. And we went through that one already. Here we have this is a really cool video that I found. It's kind of unrelated, but it was really cool. So I decided to add it to the presentation tonight.
There's a lot of speculation right now, but given the dark coloring, the forward-facing camera up top, and the small size, it's believed to be an uncrewed surface vessel. Water drone. We don't have any pictures of what's on the inside, but Russia did announce that they towed it out in the middle of the water and blew it up, which leads to the idea that this little guy might be filled with explosives and is designed to be driven directly into larger naval vessels. That looks like one more thing for the Russian Navy to worry about. Russia posted some pictures of this strange-looking boat that washed ashore on Crimea a couple days ago. There's a lot of speculation right now, but given the dark coloring...
I do like this comment off to the side. Sabotage for the Great Reset is the name of the game. Financial collapse is coming all by design. I've seen nothing but proof of that. Nothing but proof. Here we have a tweet from this account that's called Rick Rule Rhetoric. Rick Rule Rules writes, the very big wins in my career, the 10 baggers, the 20 baggers, share two common features. First, they took 5 years. Second, is the share price fell 50% or more during the course of me holding. And so what he's referring to right here is the next crazy gains are going to be made in the precious metals, in the base metal mining companies. These companies are absolutely vital. And they have crazy, the actual businesses have crazy leverage to the price of the metal, especially in gold and silver. And I do believe that this upcoming economic crisis can be so serious that maybe it's not a good idea to actually have your money in brokerage accounts held in digital representations of stocks. That's possible, but I'm making a pretty good sized bet on these mining companies because I do want that leverage. I do want those gains. The plan is I would like to get out a little earlier. I want to get out early. I think it's going to be a good deal, but I want to take it quick with that. And the metals that I keep in my possession, those don't go nowhere for a long, long time. I'm going to need something really good for my metals. Important wisdom there if you do choose to play this holding miners. Next up, we have a tweet from Lawrence Lepard. He writes, perfect contrary indicator. Like 2019, inflation is dead. And 1979, the death of equity is here. He's quoting Tavi Costa again. And Tabby writes, a reminder of what was on the front page of Wall Street Journal 2 weeks ago. And here's an old. Oh, here we go. Wall Street Journal writes, gold loses its status as haven. And I'm certain we're going to return to this someday and just laugh at the irony of this. It's a certainty that not only the dollar, but all the other world's currencies that are carrying enormous amounts of derivatives within those financial systems and leverage are going to suffer the same fate as the dollar, and people will be fleeing back to gold and silver. And someday soon, this will be some fodder for, it'll be some fodder for a good laugh at the expense of the Wall Street Journal. Good stuff. I'm saving that one too. Here we had a little bit of a debate brewing on Twitter with SRS Rocco Report having a little bit of go with Dave Kranzler. What they're talking about is SLV versus PSLV, which is becoming a debate right now in Twitter. And I did like Dave's response here. He says, any precious metals ETF, regardless of structure, is a derivative. If you do not possess your gold or silver in any physical form, you do not own it. That is not debatable. And we do see Bob Coleman replying underneath, agree. However, I believe that we are referring to owning shares in the fund and the broker lending it out to those looking to short. Okay, let me say this again. Bob Coleman writes, I agree. However, I believe they were referring to owning shares in the fund and the broker dealer lending out the shares to those looking to short the respective ETFs. So long story short, we do see more and more debates. These debates are happening over PSLV and SLV, and there's some people that are defending SLV, and at least on the Wall Street Silver side of things, and many other of these popular social media accounts that are also covering the silver space. It's widely agreed that PSLV is better, but we do have some guys that are involved in the financial markets that are saying, hang on a minute, hang on, there's upside to SLV. But I highly doubt that. I've been having a good look at this Twitter debate, and I will be doing a little more research. But in my opinion, the apex, the most important thing to do is to have physical gold and silver in your possession. And secondly, I would prefer miners over an ETF with exposure to simply the price of silver currently. If you're going to keep your money in the system, and to me, owning an ETF is only that, keeping your money in the system, at least for people our size. If you're a huge financial institution, well, then maybe you do want an ETF because these companies are too small and too volatile for you to park a large amount of your money in there. But for regular people, I would be in the miners. Why would I want my money in the digital system where it's exposed to all kinds of different risks and not be having more upside leverage? That's just my personal opinion. All right, we got a few more slides left. We got one more slide left. Let's go. Here we have another article from Bloomberg. Uninvestable UK market lost 300 billion in Truss's first month. Investors turn away from British policy chaos. Domestic stocks start to look cheap as pound recovers. That was a pretty good final slide for us. And there's a blatant example of Bloomberg participating in manipulation. They would have you think that the crisis was averted. It was averted. All is better. Bank of England stepped in. However, that was only temporarily. It does not seem, we saw other opinions. We saw other information that all is not well in England. And the Bank of England will almost certainly need to step in again because the treasury and bond system there, the gilts are in an unsustainable position, and the US interest rates remain high. They have not gone down, but the sentiment almost feels like the Fed has already pivoted, but that nothing of the sort has happened. So we are not yet back to easy money. And the Bank of England, like us, like everyone else, has two choices. You either allow the defaults to occur, and because the debt derivative bubble that is interconnecting the entire globe, who knows what that brings down, or you just let the Bank of England continue to step in, buy those bonds to keep the yield low, and they slowly but surely, maybe not so slowly, destroy the British pound. So the notion that domestic stocks start to look cheap in Britain because the pound is recovering is more bullshit. It's more bullshit. It's not recovering. That's terrible advice, Bloomberg. All right. That brings us to the end of the show. 35 minutes. I hope I gave you some value. I hope I gave you some valuable information. Please give me a like, or if you have any criticism, commentary, I would love to hear it. I would very much appreciate your feedback. I'm working hard to make this channel good for you, to serve you, and I do appreciate you. If you have watched the entire video, I wish you a good night, and I hope especially that you're in good health, and I'll see you soon. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll be right back here tomorrow. Bye.